Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, who's going to be sitting out this show. That's right, folks. I have a special guest host today. First time ever handing over the keys to someone else to run the Steel City Underground podcast. And she is a contributor to the Steel City Underground website, writing some really great articles and someone that's really fun to interact with online. Terry Fletcher will be taking over the show today to discuss the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver personnel groupings. Who's good, who's bad, why they're the best. So I'm going to hand over the reins to Terry and rejoin everyone shortly with a Pittsburgh Steelers Bengals preview and why that Bengals game, why the Bengals just aren't the Steelers' rivals. But until then, folks, give Terry a listen and let us know what you think, because quite honestly, she may know more about football than I do.
Hi, everyone. This is Terry Fletcher for Steel City Underground. First podcast, we're going to talk about wide receivers. We have quite a few of them, actually, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But in looking at this wide receiver core, it's interesting as we are picking them up, because what we're looking at and what was actually on the original depth chart for the Steelers is actually starting to look a little bit different. So when we look at Antonio Brown, of course, he's the number one. Then we get into Marcus Wheaton, we have Darius Haywood-Bay, and Sammy Coates, and let's not forget Eli Rogers. He was a star in preseason, where he caught 7 preseason passes for 64 yards. He also ran for 5 yards around that. And then when we don't have our Martavis Bryant, and we have some guys out with injury, we have to really take a look at some of these younger guys. In our first game of the season, as it's already been discussed, we had kind of an interesting game. I mean, we definitely came out with a strong win, and as we're going into Cincinnati this weekend, we can't ask for anything better than, our first win at 38-16 over the Redskins. But as we look at this receiving core, let's really take a look at what we did and, what really we can expect going into this with Cincinnati. Well, first of all, when I'm looking at this game that we just played, there's a lot of talk about, Antonio Brown and what he did, over 100 yards, couple of touchdowns, and that's just what he does. 8 passes caught. But when we're looking at it from what the coaching decisions were, a lot of talk was, about just how aggressive we were. But I remember the plays, there was a 4th and 1 play, the first one, that resulted in a touchdown for Antonio. And, I don't mind that because of the talent we have on the offense that they try that. But it sounds like from what the coaches post discussion was on this, post presser, they said basically it was predetermined that they were going to go deep regardless of the coverage. And when you do that in all situations, hopefully it was just because who we were playing, you can really kind of hurt yourself if that's what your plan is. It worked in that situation, and it was a great play to see on TV or even on the field. But that's mainly because Brown's a special player. If you notice how he plays, he doesn't even look back for the ball until he's ready to catch it, and he knows he's going to catch it, and he just knows Ben's going to put it where it needs to be. But in saying that, if you actually looked at that first 4th and 1, Eli Rogers and Sammy Coates, they were both wide open. They could be seen underneath. They could have probably walked into the end zone if Ben had, not had a predetermined decision what he was going to make, and he actually, maybe did a no huddle and kind of looked at the field. So the deep shot was great and it was aggressive, but we've got to be careful because that can be a very low percentage play. We had another 4th and 1 later in the game, and even though Washington had an expectation we were going to do it, then we look back at Eli Rogers. He has an exceptional release off the line of scrimmage against the press coverage. It was a very easy first down for him. I felt, kind of bad for their defensive backs from the Redskins because they just didn't know what to do with our receivers that day. But for, a really young receiver like Eli Rogers, he's going to really be a factor because Marcus Wheaton is supposed to be back this week. We've been told and have heard from the coaches that Rodgers is still going to be the go-to guy for the slot. And so, that's kind of where we're headed for that, and that they will, still work Wheaton in, but they're not going to, take Rodgers out of a role that, in the first game he's earned. So we really have to kind of see, what the plan is as we go into kind of a hostile environment, even though we are looking at being at home and, revisiting a team that, really kind of hurt some of our guys as we were coming out of the wild card game. We can replay that game over and over again, and just seeing how they took out Antonio and they took out Ben. It just, it's just really unfortunate that we're going into that game with such a disrespect, if you will, for both of those, for that team and actually even the coaching staff. And I don't think anybody will really, argue that point, that, we're really kind of going into that game just, knowing it's going to be physical, knowing it's going to have some issues. But the biggest thing is that you want to make sure that things are clean. I mean, you don't want to anticipate that they're going to go after somebody's knees, or going to go after, our quarterback in a way that's just going to really, take him out of the season. That's just not good. Now, what we can expect here is Marcus Wheaton will probably start. He's only the clear starter of people coming back from injuries. But there are definitely some day-to-day issues going on as well. Now, the biggest thing is we're trying to figure out, will Antonio Brown also be there to return punts? So we're not sure if he's going to be doing that. We noticed that we've got also Coates in that role as well. And then on kick returns, it looks like when we're dealing with that, we've got Sammy Coates. We've also got our new cornerback, Justin Gilbert. He's also listed on that depth chart. So that should be kind of an interesting matchup there to see what they plan to do with that. But we just want to make sure that we don't have any injuries, that we are, really looking ahead to see how we can, score these, really kind of fluky touchdowns that we saw that was in Cincinnati with, the young core versus the veterans that we have. And yes, we do even call Antonio a veteran at this point. I mean, he just has such chemistry with Big Ben. You just really can't even, match it to anybody else in the league. When we're looking at Eli Rogers, you can tell that, he was very excited at the beginning. He had a misplay by stopping short of one of Ben's passes that actually kind of bounced up in the air. It seemed like it hung up there forever, and it ended up in an interception. And then you could see him come to the sideline and profusely, apologize to Ben and basically, I'm sorry, that won't happen again. And then Ben went right to him after that. And, we ended up with a great first down and a score. So he scored his first touchdown. He had an incredibly quick reaction time. And, the kid just has great speed and, just really, great hands. And that's what we want to see. And he just has such a feeling for the game that we're pretty excited to see this young talent, really come in and play for us. It's interesting when we're kind of looking at all of the, new receivers and the guys that are getting in. We also have to kind of mention Jesse James, our tight end. And it's different in Pittsburgh. A lot of people say, well, you look at the guys that are tight ends in other on other teams, and they even kind of try to fight for wide receiver money. But when you are in Pittsburgh, your role as a tight end is first to block. And then you're supposed to participate in the running and passing game. But your role is to block. You're a blocking receiver. And on other teams, you're seeing that, they're really just, over 6 foot tall receivers. And James really at 6'7" and just such a presence, he needs to, really be more of that blocking tight end. And he's doing a decent job. He's still got, a little bit of ways to go when it comes to being exactly what they want there. But he really has made, quite the impact already for the Steelers. And it looks like he's going to be continuing to be the starter. But as we kind of look back and really kind of continue with the discussion on the wide receivers, one thing that has been interesting as far as looking at, Brown versus Coates. Now Sammy Coates, he's been kind of a work in progress. He had some drops in preseason and some clear wide open easy catches where we could have won the game, but preseason's really more of a job interview and an assessment to see if there is going to be any kind of, are these guys going to make the roster? Are these guys going to be on that 53-man? What is their role going to be? And we didn't see a lot from him that made us think, wow, he could be on the bubble there. But now as he's getting into the games, even from the last game of last season, he's really got some decent hands as long as he can really look at ball protection. If he can't protect that ball and he can't, stop those drops, then they're going to stop going to him. So he's so fast and so tall, and we need that tall guy in the mix. That's what we're really looking at from Coates. But and then I keep going back from Rodgers to AB, only because they're both, guys they're 5'10", they're 185 soaking wet, and they're just guys that have to go up and get the ball. They're guys that have to, run those routes perfectly. They need to have that chemistry with their quarterback. And, and just as we heard on another one of our several part, podcasts between Ben and Antonio, who made the wide receiver? Did Ben make AB the wide receiver he is, or does AB make Ben look good? I mean, I think it's one of both. But when you look at this, wide receiver core and what we have out there, it's kind of crazy from the other team's standpoint to think that, what teams can be, so lucky to have exactly what, the Steelers have with all these different players. When we look at, DHB, so Darius Hayward-Bay, he's a big guy. He's one of the, the more imposing guys out there. And he does make some good plays. And it's interesting because I read some in one of the scouting reports on him that he's actually one of the fastest players in the league. And you wouldn't think that looking at him. But he does have some speed. But he has a problem fighting for the ball from a defender. So when it's to him and it's right to him, he can bring it in. And, I noticed when he was on the Raiders for a while, he did have some drops. He had some drops last year. He has luckily more catches than drops. But when he's got a defender on him, he has a really tough time just making that play and taking that ball. And I think that's why he's not the one that's taking where Martavis Bryant is out for the year, where we lost him. So I think that's what they were kind of expecting that he might do. But when you look at him just strictly from an offensive presence and, almost kind of like a fullback tight end where he really kind of helps with the blocking, he does a very good job with that. But we need him to really step it up and make those catches and for some long yardage, because we're going to need everything we have when we go into Cincinnati. We've got a very physical team. We've got a quarterback who, for some reason, all of a sudden is becoming mobile and, making some plays and runs. And we were doing that 3-man rush when we were in Washington. That's not going to work in Cincinnati. We're going to have at least 5-man pass rush. We're going to have to really get after that quarterback. And that's what happened the last time we played them, as far not in the playoffs, but in the regular season. That when we really got after that quarterback and he broke his thumb or whatever, they couldn't even recover from that. And so we really have to really look at this from, a division standpoint. There's a lot of media hype about them being the rival, instead of what we're dealing with the Ravens. But, to be a rival, in my opinion, I kind of agree with what, Cam Hayward said. You have to have won a Super Bowl. You have to have gotten to the Super Bowl. And this team hasn't. They're really, stopped any time that they are, get to the playoffs. They just don't get past it. But then you look at the Ravens and, clear rivals there. And so we always want to kind of put things in perspective. What they are is they're notorious for, I don't know if it's being jealous of our group, because I know that I would be, not being able to have the success that the Steelers have had. But they're really, they're not rivals. They just don't always play, clean. And that's really where we have to, kind of step it up and make sure that, we really do whatever we can to just, make ourselves, we have to worry about what we're doing. We don't want to worry about what they're doing. We don't care. We just want to worry about what we're doing. I think the only thing we have to be concerned with is making sure that we, do something to neutralize A.J. Green. Otherwise, it's going to be definitely a tough feel. But we're hoping that our new player, Justin Gilbert, since he's officially kind of been part of our backfield, and it looks like he was the one that kind of replaced what we had with Brandon Boykin a little bit. But he's going to have to, show some pretty good defensive expectations than what numbers he put up when he was with the Browns. One thing that's going to be kind of a challenge as well is that when our offensive line has been outstanding protecting Ben. He only had 1 sack last time, and when that happens, and how excellent they are, we end up with D'Angelo Williams, who absolutely is our star running back right now, while Le'Veon Bell's out, but he also had some receiving yards as well, and so we're going to have to continue to rely on our offensive line so that they can, get some space and some separation so our wide receivers can absolutely do their job and get after it. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long game. So as we're, taking a look ahead and trying to really, forge through and figure out what the game plan is going to be as we, head towards Sunday, we just really, really want to see, a physical game. We want to see a kind of an offensive display of getting over that 30 points again. I mean, if we can get that 30 points again, we're really going to be golden when it comes to this team. I just don't think that they can put up those kind of numbers from the Cincinnati perspective. Everybody says, oh, well, last week Cincinnati still, won. Well, they won by 1 point. And, the only reason they won is because the other team missed a field goal. So it's not like they're winning because they're so much better. But as long as we have, number 7, Ben under center, and you've got Antonio Brown, who, kind of gets the game more than anybody, then, they're really just have this talent that nobody else has. And I think a lot of, other teams are really afraid of it. When you take a look at, what other teams have, they usually have one go-to guy. They've got, one, really good, receiver that they, kind of rely on most of the time. But as far as having the receiving core that the Steelers do, and just really looking at, all the options and all the tools and all of the weapons that Ben has, it's just going to be an incredible display to see what we actually have out there. Mike Tomlin said, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a physical game. I'm looking to win this game, and I'm really looking for everyone to just do their job. And doing your job means coming prepared. Make sure they're looking at tape. Make sure that they have really seen what the schemes are going to be, and just really try to step up and understand that there's going to be a lot, I would assume, of no huddle. There's going to be a pretty big passing game, but because I know that sometimes we hear Tomlin say, well, I'm not interested in balance and going into the running game with the passing game. But, with this team, with Cincinnati, as much as they are not my favorite, and I just think they just don't play with class, I think we have to really just understand that if we don't have that balance and we don't have the running and passing game, that it's going to be a long game. So we're hopeful for what we're looking to head into for Sunday, and we just hope that we can put the numbers up again. Everybody just wants to see that 2,000-yard season from Antonio Brown, and I think he's going to do it this year. If we can keep Ben upright and, Antonio just continues to be Antonio, even with everybody that's out there, it'll just be just such an incredible run for him to really do that. But, personal stats aside, we really want to do whatever we can to win this game and to just be 2-0 in our division as we, get ready to kind of see, what we're going to do against Philly the following week. And it's just going to be just such a backyard, brawl. There's going to be so many side notes going on. It's not just going to be about football. It's going to be about, I know there's going to be some taunting calls, which will be interesting this year, because if you get 2 of those, then you actually get thrown out. We saw that tonight in the Thursday night football Jets game where Eric Decker was actually warned that he said another one, you're actually in sportsmanlike contact, and you will be, thrown out of the game. So you'll be ejected. So that's something that we're going to have to be careful of. A lot of people don't understand or don't know this about Antonio Brown. He's a trash talker. He can talk with the best of them, and he's going to have to really, not let them get into his head. Last time he was on the field, of course it wasn't in Pittsburgh, but last time he was on the field, it was really where he was taken out, and that's got to still stink. Now, luckily, we're not going to be facing perfect this game, so that's actually a good thing. But we're still going to be dealing with Jones. We're still going to be dealing with the physicality of the other players, and so we just have to be aware of that and not let them get in our heads and really just kind of step it up, and hopefully our young receiving core as well as our veterans are ready to do that. But we have got so many weapons for Ben. I see another 350-yard game. I see him throwing for 3 touchdowns. I think Williams is going to have a couple of touchdowns. I see it being a very high-scoring game. And if I had to kind of guess on where we're going to be at, I say Steelers take it, and it's going to be 38-20. So that's my guess on this game. And let's just hope I'm correct. And good luck, everybody. This is Terry Fletcher, a contributor for SCU. Thank you again for listening. Have a great night.
Give Terry a listen and let us know what you think, because quite honestly, she may know more about football than I do. And once again, I would like to thank Terry Fletcher for jumping on the flagship program here, the Steel City Underground Podcast, and contributing to the website as usual. Terry, your efforts are always appreciated, and I'm sure all of our listeners enjoyed your segment as well. Until next time, folks, Bengals, Steelers, Heinz Field opener this Sunday. Keep an eye out for the review coming soon. Be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.